Hello, everyone. Welcome to this really special session this morning, Central European time, UK time, and evening time for you, Kim. Welcome. And we have with us Kim Wright, who does not need much of an introduction to many lawyers all over the world we know her as the leader, one of the leaders of the Integrative Law movement. She has written several books, including Lawyers as Peacemakers and Lawyers as Change Makers. And she has really been pioneering new ways of being and doing in the legal profession, which is what we are about, particularly over the next 5 days. So I'm really excited to have this wonderful conversation with Kim Wright. Welcome, Kim. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I have slides and I'm disabled, so I need to be turned on to do my slides. I am really happy to be here. It's a little after 1 a.m. where I am, and so that's some measure of the commitment I have.
Thank you so much.
So
have we gotten that screen sharing enabled? Good. All right.
I just have a few slides, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, so that even though you think I need no introduction, I think that I probably do, and about the Integrative Law movement, and then the lab that we're doing. So for the last 12 years, I have been traveling. And in fact, I would still be traveling if not for the pandemic. And I have gone to 6 continents, and I have done hundreds of trainings, thousands of interactions with the most cutting edge lawyers in the world. And I do write, I write a lot. These are some of the places that you might have seen me. But it's still, the Integrative Law movement is not very well known. And you mentioned one of my books is Lawyers as Change Makers, and the subtitle is The Global Integrative Law Movement. So it and Lawyers as Peacemakers are actually sort of a report from the field, the things I've been finding out. So one of the ways I like to talk about this is that the old system is dying. The old legal system is no longer working, and it's time for us to actually build a new legal system. And it's not like we have to start from scratch, because there are a lot of people who've been working on this for decades now, creating new ways of doing things. And a lot of this movement is actually based on our visions and our purposes, our values, our mission. And so I thought I would, as a way of getting to know me, I'd actually share mine. So I'll start with my vision. It looks really long, but it actually takes 1 minute. And I can tell you how I know that is I was at Findhorn in, I think it was 2014, and we were doing a news story conference. And at the news story conference, we broke up into a lot of small groups. And at the end, they said, why don't we have everybody give us a vision? And you have 1 minute to give a vision, and you have 20 minutes to write it. And under pressure, this is what I wrote, and it stood the test of time. So the seeds of the late 1990s and early 2000s have flourished. We are grateful to our pioneers and trailblazers who held this vision and brought it to fruition. Lawyers are now recognized for the true purpose: peacemaking, problem solving, and healing wounds of the community. Trials are rare and civil. Collaboration, prevention, and transformation are the lawyer's stock and trade. We create sustainable agreements and resolutions. Lawmakers serve, conscious of all stakeholders and of our interconnectedness with nature and each other. They work on common goals and values to benefit everyone. Law enforcement focuses on right relationships, working in partnership with the community to foster strong, empowered, and safe communities. Judges are wise leaders who help to balance competing values, hold everyone accountable, and deliver fair results with love, compassion, and empathy. Prisons are a part of our past. Now we focus on rehabilitation, healing, and reconnection for all members of society. Criminal behavior is seen as a symptom of brokenness that needs to be healed. Law students still learn the focused analytical thinking that is known as thinking like a lawyer. Now they're also trained in holistic thinking. Art is a part of the balanced curriculum. Our history of restorative practices and nonviolent communication in schools has helped to produce citizens who tell their truths, take responsibility, and accept accountability. The legal system works for everyone. There are no more lawyer jokes. They're not funny anymore. So this is what guides me. I saw Victor laugh. There are a lot of lawyer jokes out there, but this guides me. And I actually have projects in every area. Like, so I have people who are in law enforcement who are doing holistic policing. For example, I have judges who are changing the courts. And so my role in this movement has been to sort of be a cheerleader, and I showcase what's going on. I support, I nurture, and I'm like the mom. I do whatever needs to be done. If the dishes need to be washed, I wash the dishes. And if somebody needs a shoulder to cry on, I'm there for that. If somebody needs to celebrate, that's what I do. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but this is foundational to who I am, and it also colors my work in the movement. So I call it the emerging integrative law movement. And this diagram sort of talks about it as though it's a process, and for a lot of people it is, and for some people they come in the middle or they jump around. But very often lawyers find that they're miserable in the law. And it seems like the more conscious you get, the more miserable you get, because you see that it's actually a broken system. And so Professor Susan Dykoff talks about it as the tripartite crisis, which I'm kind of irreverent about. She has a much more articulate way of saying it, but it's lawyers don't like each other, lawyers don't like themselves, and society doesn't like lawyers. It's the tripartite crisis. You know, the lawyer jokes are a symptom of the lack of respect that lawyers have, and we fight with each other, and we don't take care of ourselves. And often when we start to wake up to the broken system, we have this idea that maybe it's me, and we start trying to fix ourselves. And in fixing ourselves, we maybe will, like, some people do therapy, some people go to yoga, some people take up a spiritual practice. And so that for me is the first stage of this cycle, where people start doing their own inner work. And Margaret was so great yesterday or the day before. She was talking about how integrative law is law practiced from the inside out. And this is that first part where the inside work is starting to be done. And along the way, people actually figure out maybe it's not me after all. Maybe there is something wrong with the system. The system wants us to believe it's us. Like we should just buck up and we should be tough. And, who cares if you work 28 hours a day? You should just be tougher. But it's really that the system is not working for human beings. And so we move from that reflective, contemplative, self-growth, self-improvement stage to starting to actually look at, what are my values? What is it that I value? Who am I as a purpose? And what is my mission? And that kind of inquiry, which is the extension of the personal growth, actually leads us to start having those same kinds of conversations with our clients. And it starts to shift us to a more client-centered focus. The next stage then evolves. And that one is more about our consciousness and starting to see how things are interconnected. It's a broader awareness, and consciousness really is about being aware. It actually is a synonym for being awake. If you're unconscious in a hospital, then you are actually in a coma or something like that. So there's like this awakening that happens, and people start start looking for something else, and then out of that arises this idea of interconnectedness and this holistic feeling about relationships. Now, if people have gone through these stages, they're actually then confused about how to be a lawyer. And a lot of people leave the law. But the people I work with often become what I call the change makers. They answer that question, how do I be me and still be a lawyer? And they start taking action steps. And so they transform their own practice. They invent these amazing things. Some of the lawyers that I've met have created some models that have become world famous. Like Stu Webb created a model called collaborative law out of this kind of process. And collaborative law has now spread the world over. There are probably more than 50,000 lawyers who have been trained in the model. It's changed how divorce law is practiced in a lot of places. And there are a lot of other models as well. I actually made this graphic. These are some of the things that have emerged from this consciousness, this systems thinking, this inside out values-based approach. So, every day I find something else. So, some people are focused on their wellness and the wellness of their clients. That whole lawyer well-being movement is part of the integrative law movement. Being change makers. There's something called multi-sensory law, which is looking at, how do you bring like the visual and the audio and sort of the more intuitive into the law. So I'm doing a lab, and I've got a lot of panelists that are just fabulous examples. Later tonight, I'm going to be doing sort of the full introduction to integrative law. We all new material. You're not going to see the same stuff. I'm going to be looking at the models and the approaches, the values, and where are the seeds sprouting for what I call this new legal system, and what are some of the things that are happening out there. On Saturday, we're actually going to do more of a workshop on values-based law practice, and we're going to talk about why values are important, and then we're going to do some exercises, and then we have some panelists who have designed their legal practices according to their values. They're really doing out-of-the-box work. You'll be really interested in that. On Sunday, we're going to look at one of the values that's common to the integrative law movement, and that's being creative and how to be creative in your law practice. We have panelists that are going to talk about legal design and comic contracts. The actual inventor of comic contracts is there. We're going to look at art and self-expression, and the people that are coming are just really creative, and they're using creativity and law in a way that will surprise most people. Like when I show people a picture of a comic contract, like something in their head has to change gears. Then Monday, we're going to look at actually becoming a systems change maker. So I mentioned that systems change is part of it. We're going to look at systems change, and then we're going to look at some people who are doing systems change, that are doing earth law, restorative justice, sharing law. We're going to talk about some other kinds of models that are out there that if you really want to change the system, you might want to look at one of those. And then Tuesday is actually the evolutionary consciousness. We're going to introduce spiral dynamics, and we have a panel who are sort of the experts on conscious law. And so I'm really looking forward to all of these. Margaret, thank you for having this event so that I can come and I can talk about this, and I can reach people, because that actually fulfills my mission.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kim. I mean, and this lab is actually one of the most specially designed experiences, curated experiences for those of you joining us in this summit. And it really is, if you want to create transformation in your legal practice, you are frustrated about, you're seeing the systems that are not working for all of us, this is the lab for you to attend, because you get a very good first introduction into what the integrative law movement is, and then different models that you can learn about, that you can try to apply in your practice. So this integrative law lab, it's this evening at 6:30 p.m. CET. But Kim, thanks for that presentation. And what I loved was your vision, the mission that you came up with, the vision and mission 2045 that you came up with. You know, we live in this complex world, and I know you and so many others are doing so much to raise awareness, to educate and teach on this new way of being and doing in the law. My question is this enough because of the impetus we are feeling right now with the system's failures that have been exposed even more radically than before because of COVID-19? Is it enough for us to be acting organically, or is there a need now for more sort of structuring, coordination, and focus together?
I think the next stage is going to be the complete collapse of the system. The existing system, and I don't say this lightly, because the people who study the collapses of civilizations and the people who study climate change and you know, look at the systemic racism and you know, all of that, the systems experts are saying that the system is dying, and we can hospice it, and we can, you know, try to make it easier for the people who are going to be you know, really experiencing a lot of pain and disruption from the failure of that system. But the work that I'm really interested in is the gathering of the change makers who are going to plant the seeds. It's like that old system is compost, and these new approaches that are coming up are like pilots and experiments, and some of them are going to, you know, take root and grow and flourish, and others of them are going to be, well, that was a nice experiment, and we're going to move on. And so we need people who are willing to be that kind of courageous, so that, and courageous and creative, so that there's some, you know, so that there's some people out there who are trying these new things, and they're honing them. And so when that system completely collapses, there will be a place for people to go. There will be services. And, you know, restorative justice is one of those great examples, because the restorative justice does not need the legal system. It can operate completely on its own. And in fact, sometimes the legal system gets in the way. So if that legal system were gone, restorative justice would be another way that people could resolve the kinds of issues that come up between people. You know, if what we are doing is healing the relationships as lawyers, and there's an old story that the doctor heals the body, the shaman or the priest heals the soul, and the lawyers heal their relationships. And so if that is our role, is to heal the relationships, then that system that we've created over hundreds of years, that is no longer applicable to who we are and who we're becoming, is not going to serve us. But we need this other system. So that's, you know, like I'm eager to find the people who are already doing that. That's been my work for 10 years, is finding those people, but then, you know, finding more people who are willing to take that on. Did I answer the question?
See, I think we share a passion, almost, because I'm coming again at it in a different, because I think we share a passion for that. I think we're seeing the signs of system collapse, as you've said. And so we're coming at this from, you know, that same common ground. And my question is, how integrated is the integrative law movement? Because, you know, if we want to get somewhere fast, we need, it's better if we can work together and get there together. So how integrated is the movement? You spoke about Stu's collaborative model. Can you tell us a little bit more about that you say over 50,000 lawyers all over the world are, yeah.
So Stu was a member of a couple of groups, a group he called the Creative Lawyers and the International Alliance of Holistic Lawyers. Neither one of those groups currently exists, but he was a family lawyer, and he had a very colorful history, including being a pharmacist before he was a lawyer. And he decided that he didn't like what he was doing to families, and that the legal system was not the way to resolve family disputes. So he started experimenting, and he would invite people over for a potluck. They, bring a covered dish. We're going to talk about what to do, and started creating relationships. And he said at the time that when somebody had broken bread at your table, it was a lot more difficult for them to fight with you the next day. And so he started bringing a more peaceful, collaborative approach. But then he realized it wasn't enough. He had actually one of his dear friends, and he basically went to war in a really highly contested custody case. And it really damaged their friendship. And he said, there has to be something else. So he actually wrote a letter to the judge and said, I'm not going to litigate anymore. And he created this collaborative model, which is that his client, the other lawyer, and the other client in a divorce would sign an agreement saying they weren't going to court. And if they didn't resolve outside of court, they had to hire new lawyers. They'd start all over. So the mediation model had some precedent in that, and so he was able to. He was able to do that, and then he started doing that in his own community, and then it started growing. And then there were some people like, for example, Pauline Tesler in California found this model, and she started sort of systematizing it. And then in California, they added interdisciplinary professionals to that model, and they created the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, which is a membership organization with thousands of members that include lawyers now and other kinds of professionals that work on divorces. So it's a multidisciplinary practice. Is
it primarily in family law, or?
They've tried it, and there are a few places that it makes sense. There are a lot of places it makes sense, but there are a few places that it actually works. And they seem to be areas that are also family related. So for example, probate, because when families are fighting, this is a model that really is sort of custom designed. And because Stu custom designed it for family law, then collaborative law pretty much is there. Now, having said that, this integrative law movement has grown up in a lot of different places. So if you are a family lawyer, maybe you find collaborative law, or maybe you find mediation. But if you're a criminal defense lawyer, you might find restorative justice or the problem-solving courts, or another model, or you might invent a model. Now, there's some models that involve social workers and rehabilitation in the lawyer's office, for example. Like I had a forgiveness coach who worked in my office at one point. So there are lots of little experiments that people just creatively bring about. In the corporate world, there are a lot of contracts, and there's the whole corporate governance. So I know you have some of the people who are reinventing contracts here. And so if you're a corporate lawyer, maybe you find conscious contracts, or you find corporate, conscious corporate governance or something like that. And so you start where you are, and then you go and you find the thing that that is there, or you invent it. I mean,
Right.
all of these have been invented once by somebody, and or we find models that we can adapt. We can bring in, like I had a social worker in my office, and I did a lot of work in the office with like support groups and things like that. And I had a child counselor who went into the schools and worked with the kids in the schools who were going through divorce and things like that. And so, it's like whoever you have, whatever skills you have, you can take those into your law practice and you sort of get out of that box. We all know what a lawyer looks like and what a law office looks like. And the box gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so you can start, expanding that. And as you know more about yourself and what's important to you, what your skills and strengths and all that are, then you actually can find a path and be connected. So there are thousands of us. We're all doing different things. I meet somebody new every day who thinks they completely invented this because they haven't connected to the community. And a lot of my mission has been about finding those people and connecting them. So I imagine that we're going to have a bunch of new connections out of this conference.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you are doing the much needed and I think critical work in this time when time is an issue, to try to bring some coherence into this movement. And, listening to you, it's clear this is a really exciting time for lawyers. It's a really exciting time because it's an opportunity for, lawyers to bring their creativity into the area in which they specialize in. And that's the importance of the lab you're hosting a little later today. Now, you yourself, I see we only have a couple minutes left, but I think it would be remiss of us not to mention and just ask you to speak a little bit before we end on the conscious contracts movement, because you were one of the founders of that conscious contract movement. I think your transformation and creativity came and molded that area. If you could share just a little bit on that.
Well, I stand on the shoulders of a lot of other people, and I stand beside a lot of other people in that. But the idea of conscious contracts, which is a trademark for values-based contracts, is that the first thing that we're taught in law school is that a contract is a meeting of the minds, and yet we completely skip over that. So in the conscious contracts, you actually have a conversation with the other party about who they are, and you share who you are. And we do the kinds of exercises where we talk about values. We talk about mission and vision, and why do you want to do this? Like, why do I want to do this with Margaret when I could go do it with Victor? Like, why would we choose each other? And you write that into the contract, and it creates this deeper trust and this deeper connection. And then you want to preserve that. So the other part of the conscious contract is the clause, which we call the addressing change and engaging disagreement clause, which is, how are we going to keep this relationship? When something changes or something doesn't feel right, how are we going to initiate a conversation? How are we, what are the steps that we're going to take to try to keep our goals in mind, keep on that path? And so there are a lot of other things that are part of good contracts, like plain language, and we use some design and we use some visuals, but we call it the touchstone and that clause for addressing change are the two real components that make it a conscious contract.
And will the participants get a little bit more of that in the lab this evening?
They'll get a little of that in the lab as well.
Thank you.
Later tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim, for this really stimulating discussion where we are seeing how this integrative movement is developing all over the world and how people can get, and lawyers can get more involved. Is there a space for non-lawyers in the integrative law movement? Last question.
We have some. In Italy, in fact, we have an accountant who is just one of our cornerstones, right, because he came to our first meeting and he fell in love with everybody. There's some legal staff. One of the founders of one of the organizations, which is called Renaissance Lawyers Society, was a paralegal who just cared passionately about the people that she worked for and wanted to create well-being and wholeness for them.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for this session. You know, we're on a tight schedule, so I'm really excited for your lab this evening, 6:30 p.m. CET. And what time is that in your time zone, Kim?
It is 10:30.
And what time zone is that for those who are?
I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in Mountain Time Zone.
Mountain time zone. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you later, Kim.
See you later. Thank you so much.